Hey, I'm just gonna wait for everyone to stream in and then we can get started. Hey,
Hey. Oh my god, this look.
I always say I'm gonna go subtle and it never goes as planned.
How lucky for me. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a busy day, but I'm like so pumped for this. I've been looking forward to this since we've been planning it, so I'm
I'm
really excited.
excited. This is one I've been looking forward to a lot.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna give a couple minutes while people join in and then we can get started.
Okay, cool. Mm. So I have like a notebook with me. I'm probably gonna be like writing things down,
Yeah, no problem.
maybe. So if I'm like veering off, I'm paying attention. It's just
No problem.
the right stuff. Oh my god, I've never done an Instagram live before. I'm like
Neither.
really
I didn't expect to ever use it until we got this idea for Divine. So I'm like, hey Zule.
Hi Soleil.
Okay. So whatever reason, it's not letting me paste the comment I was gonna pin to the top. Um, so Rai, if you see this, if you can comment the usual information, and I can pin it. Um, but just in general, a content warning of things we usually cover in discussing divinity. They usually include religion, trauma, homophobia, transphobia, colonization, anti-blackness, abuse. Um, so if that's a sensitive topic, um, take space and leave if you need, if you feel the need. Um, follow at Divine Art Book on Instagram for more information on the residency, and you can follow Tati at Honeyshot. And please be sure to follow at Hot Wheelz Festival for the rest of our programming. We just launched our residency today, which is pretty exciting. Make sure to check the link in our bio and Hot Wheels residency for the community prayer list we just released, and they'll have more information on what that looks like. Um, so let's just get started.
Okay.
So today, I'm very excited to announce our new guest, Tati Rodriguez, creatively known as Honey Shot, is an Afro-Latina writer and performance artist from Chicago. Her professional background includes network television screenwriting, independent film programming, editorial work, and magazine publishing. She has performed original poetry and raps, facilitated workshops, and organized installation projects. She is currently an editor for Pest Control Magazine, an independent arts and literary publication she co-founded this past August. She will complete her BA in communication from the University of Illinois in Chicago in December 2020. She's a well-rounded storyteller. Her work consistently centers queerness, blackness, and Afro-Latina Latinx identities through a joyful, non-linear, spiritual, resistant lens. Um, so thank you for being here, Tati. So
Thank you so
exciting.
much for having me. This is such a great opportunity. When we've been planning this, I'm just like there's nothing but like good energy, and every time we've worked together, it's always just been like a beautiful experience. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad to be in space. And thank you for everyone who's tuning in so far. Just for the record, if you missed part of it or you had to dip out early, we will be archiving this on our YouTube page that we just started. So if you look us up on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And then it will also be archived on the Hot Wheels Festival website as well. So, Tati, let's get started. Give us like a quick summary of your like church spiritual journey growing up. Like, what were you indoctrinated to believe? What were you born in? What was like some of the traditions that you grew up around, and like what did that look like for you?
Sure. So I was raised around a lot of cultural Catholicism, so I'm half Puerto Rican and half Colombian, and like mostly grew up with my mother, and she raised me around a lot of cultural Catholicism, having like specifically coming from her upbringing in Colombia. And what that looks like is having, so my mother is a white passing mestiza, and she does have a father who, like my grandfather, is indigenous. He never spoke about his own indigenous community growing up because he faced a lot of trauma and a lot of hardship in his indigenous community. But there was always this approximation to the indigenous practices that were a part of Colombian identity. And I find that a lot of Colombians are really spiritual and have this sort of understanding of like herbal remedies and spiritual baths and specific traditions that are that are outside of the Catholic Church, or sort of combined with those like Catholic beliefs. And my my mother's grandfather was very involved in a lot of like barter systems with the indigenous communities that they were living around. And so there would be lots of instances in which he would help them repair some of their homes, and they in turn would like offer remedies or like healing practices to our family. There are specific stories that I don't know if I feel entirely comfortable revealing like the intricacies of them, but in which like some of my aunts had received these sort of like healing, these sort of like healing, they would receive like healing from the indigenous communities, and it would be something that was very thorough, and it's something that my mother grew up around, that my grandmother was very connected to. She makes her own like perfumes, was always like making her own like oils, is very interested in like herbal remedies, herbal steams, spiritual baths, things of that nature. And growing up, I went to Catholic school until 5th grade. And all while that was going on, there was always this very natural, like it was just so common for us to like invite the senora to do divining work or psychic work in our house, to tell us about the spirits that were living in our house and how to interact with them, to talk to me as a very young child, like to hold on to me, to lay hands on me, when I was going through like this, when I was going through like tough moments in my childhood. And it's something that always stuck with me. We've always had traditions regarding like New Year's and Christmas that I try to ask other Colombian people or other Latinx people, oh, do you do that? And they're like, no, we don't do that. Like that's just you. And I'm just like, okay, cool. So there's something else going on here. So I think overall I was raised to have faith in God, to manifest my hopes and dreams, and to have a respect for the dead, and to understand that they're always with us, and to sort of like pay your respects to the dead through veneration. I was always raised around like an awareness of like earthbound spirits, and then spirits that are in like a spiritual realm, that are sort of on a different plane of existence. But then in regards to like earthbound spirits, my mother would tell me what to do if there was like a I don't want to say malevolent, because they weren't, they were just earthbound, and so they were not able to have like their energy recycled into more protective ways of being, into more like high frequency ways of being. So like I was very aware of like ghosts or like paranormal activity from a young age, and my mom would tell me what to do in those situations and handle it. So yeah, I think that's enough of that, but that's what
No,
I was.
that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I'm pretty sure it goes without saying, like, feel free to share only what you're comfortable with. Don't feel pressured to perform or to like share trauma
Yeah.
that you don't want to be sharing. Like, whatever your comfort level is. And for anyone that's tuning in, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try and get to them. But also feel free to just drop words of affirmation for Tati because she's like sharing her story, and sharing stories deserves affirmation. Um, cool. So yeah, you gave us a really good rundown of like where you came from, what you were born to believe, and I think that's always like there's always like connections we can make to that. So thank you for sharing. But so like, what does your journey look like now? Like, what do you practice? What do you do, like in terms of spirituality?
Yeah. So I have always had this appreciation of these practices that I was raised around and always told to keep it under wraps, to not speak to other people about this because they might not be receptive to these sorts of conversations. Um, at the I think at like 19 or something, I felt very I've always been involved in like an art practice, and I feel like that's something that deeply connects to my spirituality. But something very specific that came to me was this um, moment when I was like 18 or 19, where I was just realizing that I wasn't as close to those practices that like give me these very like healing, meditative like experiences. And so I started looking into and also like making connections to like my ancestors to begin like potion making for spiritual baths. And spiritual baths is something that I've always been raised around. It's something that my cousins have been raised around. It's something that my family has prioritized as like a really important ritual. Um, and so I started making these like herbal love potions as a practice of self love. And it would involve a sort of like experience between not only did I start practicing this for myself, but I started like doing it for my mom, and my mom was of course like yes, like do this. This is what we've been doing. Like I want you to learn, get closer to this experience. Um, and she's always been very close to like her own sort of herbal remedies. I started making love potions, and then it became a part of this larger concept project where I had made a poem slash rap called Love Potion, and then I had the fortune of being an artist for 21 Minus. Um, and when I was doing that, my installation project involved just me facilitating like a spiritual dialogue, and it surrounded like self-love, reciprocity of energy, and that sort of process is what goes into making it. Then I engaged in one-on-one potion making with specific people from the audience, um, and I wanted it was difficult because I'm like, okay, this is something I feel very called to do, but I'm like, spirituality is not a performance. So that's why I needed there to be a spiritual dialogue, and I needed there to be one-on-one um, sessions with people. Because when you go to a senora and you're like you have to say what's going on, or you have to begin the process of like divining work, and then you will get your sort of like prescription, and that's something that's very personal, and it's not something that's like spectacle. I was very careful to not be like, this is witchcraft 101 or something like that. I was just like, no, this is very personal to me, and it's something that, like I said, I have been discouraged from speaking about in the past, but now that I have my own sort of like solid understanding and like confidence in what I do and where I get my information from and who I'm speaking to, I'm more able to like engage in these practices because you can get your energy drained so quick if you're not being careful. So that's like a very like important moment in my spiritual journey, is to engage in that. And I'm trying to move more towards, I'm very interested in like medicine making and like herbal remedies and like herbal medicine. And it's something that I have not paid enough attention to, but I want to get closer to. And then in my practice of screenwriting, that's when I was called very specifically to La Regla de Ocha, otherwise known as Santeria. And it's something that I have, Santeria or La Regla de Ocha has always been something that I've been interested in becoming a student of. But I was very directly called to it in this process of screenwriting because I had to write. I had the fortune of writing a show. I wrote like the pilot and mapped out the season of a show called Brujas, which was it was never produced, but it was like a Stars Network show that was about Afro-Latinx people, specifically Afro-Latinas, who are witches, spiritualists, espiritistas, and they just like navigate their daily lives through their understanding of La Regla de Ocha. And so when I was going through that process of like writing, I had to engage in a lot of research. And it was like a very beautiful experience. I was in a writer's room that was comprised of, it was Hollywood's first Afro-Latinx writer's room. And it was completely comprised of professionals who engage in a writing practice, but also have a deep spiritual background and a unique spiritual background. And so I have had Orisha stand up for me. And when I was engaging in my first for real like screenwriting job, that's something that became so apparent to me and just like smacked me in the face, being like, pay attention to this, pay more attention to this, like don't leave these practices. And so since that experience, I have become more consistent in my ritual work and in my spiritual work and in the studying that I have done. And then from that point until now, since then I have engaged with elders who are within the community of La Regla de Ocha to do a spiritual investigation of my spiritual court, to understand which spirits I've inherited, to understand how to respectfully engage with my spirit guides, and to understand like who am I specifically talking to, because I've built this strong relationship with my ancestors, like very strong. Who do I talk to, and how do I make sure that I'm paying attention to like specific guides? And so I had a spiritual investigation of my court conducted by a spiritual elder, and she revealed to me La 21 División. I have Loa, who are like spirit guides within 21 División, who I have inherited. And 21 Division is a practice that is also known as like Dominican voodoo. And something that has been really apparent and important to me throughout all of these experiences is that I've had to make sure that I really pay attention and seek out knowledge from people who are actually like elders within the community, to be like, how do I engage with all of the guides in my court in a way that is like respectful, in a way that I know that like I'm not just making like 500 altars with different guides that actually have beef with each other, that I'm not like picking and choosing. So it's very important to know like who's in your court so that you can understand like what your actual spiritual inheritance is and how to like engage with that respectfully. So now I feel more I am developing closer relationships with my guides that are within the tradition of 21 División, and that has been something that has been so apparent, like something that I can't even escape even if I wanted to. They're like, "Hi, hello, what's up?" Um, so I engage in like regular altar work, spiritual work, uh, regarding like protection and cleansing, but also like the practice of art making, which has just been so like integral to my spiritual journey.
Yeah, and I would love to hear more about that relationship with your art making. But yeah, we can get to that at some later on. But how does your religious tradition and your cultural identity intersect?
Mm-hmm. Um, so, like I mentioned earlier, my mother has her own like upbringing and approximation to like indigenous practices and cultures. While I myself am not going to say like I'm indigenous because I was not raised within like that community and within that understanding, that is something that like initiated my spiritual practice and like relationship to having respect for spirits, having respect for the dead and venerating them, and having a connection to one's ancestors. In relationship to La Regla and 21 División, I feel like I am engaging in the process of like going back to like my Caribbean roots. And that is something that is incredibly important to me, to connect to like my my inherited practices, my inherited spirit guides that are directly in relationship to like my blackness and my Caribbean, my specifically my Caribbean blackness. Um, and that's something that my mother has been extremely supportive of, but she understands that she cannot entirely like facilitate that. So in relationship to La Regla de Ocha, a lot of people in Cuba practice it specifically, and then it has sort of migrated to be within Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. For 21 División, like I mentioned, it's known as like Dominican voodoo, but that is something that has heavily assimilated, like heavily like crossed over to be practiced by a lot of Puerto Ricans. And so I remember when I did the spiritual investigation of my spiritual court to figure out what guides I actually can interact with, who actually want to work with me and believe that like I can take care of this relationship with them. Um, During that session with La Señora that was like facilitating that, I just felt like I was just like, wow, everything makes so much more sense to me, because even though I do have Orisha in my court, and Orisha have stood up for me, and I have done that work with specific Orisha, when I started learning about law and I started learning about 21 División, I was just like, wow, everything is starting to really click into place. And so I feel like connecting to my Caribbean specific blackness is something that is incredibly important in my spiritual practice, and is important to like engage in a process of like decolonizing my mind away from like a Catholic upbringing. There's complexities with
Yeah,
that. There's complexities
yeah.
with that,
And I
but like
mean, and speaking of decolonization, like that's like great into the next question. Like, how have you journeyed? How has your journey toward understanding divinity from sorry, how has your journey differed from a non-traditional perspective when it comes to that divinity work and like spiritual work and divination work?
definitely my relationship to the dead and relationship to death is something that I was not raised to understand when I was going in Catholic school. Um, Definitely praying to guides that are not recognized by the Catholic Church is like a huge part of that. Um, and Also, like the type of spell work and manifesting work that I do is something that goes beyond prayer and like consistent communication. that sort of understanding that like you can just sort of understanding like you do have free will, and in the traditions that I'm like a student of, there isn't this belief of like sin. There isn't this belief of like you're going to go to hell if you sin, and that's something that is incredibly like profound for me to understand, and I think important, especially for a lot of people who are a part of like LGBTQ communities who are engaging with this sort of work, to understand that like the concept of sin is something that has just been so constructed by like these systems of power, violence that
it's been weaponized against us,
regulate us. Exactly. So definitely being like, yeah, I can make a decision, and the energy that I give to something, I'm going to get that back, but I'm not like a sinner. I can go to my ancestors and open my heart and come from an honest place and be like, this is the decision that I made in this moment from the options that I had with the materials that I had. And they don't punish, I think, is a big thing too, is that like I don't believe that like my guides, like they'll humble me for sure, but they will not punish me. All they want to do is have a loving relationship, an honest and open relationship. And I feel like that's something that I didn't really get from like a Catholic church. There's a lot of hierarchy within that, and I feel like in the practices that I'm interested in, it depends, because there are different spiritual houses that like are incredibly strict, and still do adhere to some of the colonial standards. Like there's still like a belief in La Regla de Ocha that like, for instance, like if you're a babalao, you can only be like a man, and you can only be like a cis man, you can only be a cis het man, and that's something that like might be recognized in one spiritual house and not the other. And I think that like resisting that sort of absolutism is something that is like, I don't know, that's what we're doing over here. That's what like me and my ancestors and my guides are doing over here. We're consistent. It requires consistency, but they're not going to punish me. I'm not sinning. I'm not going to go to hell. If I'm like making a decision is like that turns into a lesson. It'll turn into a lesson. It won't turn into like punishment.
Yeah, I feel like, at least for me, like I'm much more harder than myself than I think like my ancestors and spirit guides are. I'm like on my ass about not having the discipline and like doing it daily. My answer is just like, it's a process. I'm like new to this too, so it's like it's a process. It's gonna take a while to get there, and it's like as long as when I do practice it, it's with intention and my heart's there.
Yes.
I feel like the energy from like, you're good, like we're not here to punish you. We want to see you rise to the best you can. So I really love that you said that. And it's like, yeah, definitely sinning, like the word sin and the concept of sinning in hell has been very, very much weaponized against LGBT, queer people, trans people. And I feel like oftentimes we resort to these types of practices and traditions um, and followings because it's like, it gives us back our power from like,
Yes.
whereas before we didn't have the autonomy, but now we reclaim that power and we're working on, bringing it back into our lives. So I love that you said that. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, when did things just like shift for you? When did you realize like the traditional cis heteronormative traditions of like Catholicism or like Christianity, when did you realize like that's not for me?
I always had like a resistance, even when I was very young. I was very interested in the process of like this sort of like coming from an open heart, and like having an honest relationship with God in a way that is supposed to heal me and is supposed to heal my family, and bring us like this divine love. when I was in Catholic school, I was extremely I thought everyone is brainwashed. I was like, I'm extremely resistant to this. I like remember even like I like went to Catholic school until uh, fifth grade, and I still went to like CCD, like Sunday school, until eighth grade to get my confirmation to like satisfy these like cultural demands. Like, but even when I was in, when I was getting like when I was doing my catechism, one of the important steps or whatever, we had to go on like one of these like it was like called a retreat, but since we were underfunded, it was just in one of our other buildings. Like it was just like whatever. But I remember this one specific instance, and by this point, like I was like in eighth grade or whatever. By this point, I was already on Tumblr, so I'm just like, okay, I see through all of this. Like I see through all of this nonsense. Um, and there was this very charismatic like leader, like this like pastor, I don't know who they brought in, and there was at one point he was like, okay, I want the he was like wearing like a jean jacket that had an embroidered like eagle on it in this shape like filled in with the American flag. It was just very very that. But there was this one point where he was like, okay, I want the boys, like boys, I want you all to sit down. Girls, like boys, girls, um, girls, I want you to like stand in the center or whatever of the room. And then he addressed all of us and was like, um, so say you're like 15 or 16 and you get pregnant unexpectedly. Go to this side if you would uh, abort your baby. Go to this side if you would keep the baby. Stand in the center if you would give your baby up to adoption. And I remember like all of the young girls in there like stood in the give my baby up for adoption, and I went to the abort my baby side. And I just got like so yelled at. Like I was so in trouble for the rest of the day, but I literally couldn't even care because I was like, I'm
You asked me.
I'm like you asked me, and that's literally what I would do, and I wouldn't even feel bad about it. I'm just like in the sense that I'm gonna like go to hell or something
Hmm.
because of it. And I feel like from that moment I was just like, yeah, this is just like comedy. This is just like not even supposed to be like about my healing and about making sure that I'm having a relationship with God that is like personal. This is about satisfying your idea of like who I should be and what I should be using my body for. So I feel like that moment very at a very young age is when I was just like, there needs to be something else here. I know there's something else here because I've grown up around it. I've seen the way that like these other traditions have healed me and have healed my family. So I want to move towards that.
It's powerful. Thank you. So then now let's get deep. Let's dive deeper into your newer practices. Like, um, you pretty much said it. Like everything you practice now is pretty much a taboo of what we were conditioned with in the Christian or Catholic Church. So I feel you very much on that. Where it's like, for me, we can't venerate our dead because we're supposed to fear them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
something I've learned is that our dead need to be celebrated or remembered and uplifted. So it's like it's really sad that for me with the Dia de los Muertos coming up, like I don't think no one in my immediate family like observes that tradition of like
Mm.
making an ofrenda on an altar, and I'm like, for how long have my ancestors been feeling neglected in this way? Like they can have pictures all they want, like they haven't been forgotten, but like if you're not, remembering them and like bringing them offerings and like asking them how they've been, like they're not gonna feel like they're gonna tether that relationship they had with you, and it's like whether you think it was a good relationship or not. So it's crazy how like the most like just like considerate and like respectful things ended up being like one of the most taboo in like church.
Mm.
Um, So you said you like pray to guides that are not recognized by the church, and you do a lot of spell work and manifesting. But what other practices do you find sacred?
Sure. So, like I said, do like spiritual baths, altar work, a specific spiritual way of like cleaning the house, like maintaining like hygiene and like cleanliness in the house is something that's really important, especially if you're doing like altar work. Like my guides will tell me like clean it up, like change this, like I
Yeah.
don't like this is old. Like they will tell me how they feel because I've established this like consistent channel of communication with them for them to be like, you're going to respect me. I can trust that you're going to respect me. Um, Engaging in a journaling practice is something that's incredibly important. Um, Engaging in like a meditative practice, especially when I pray, is really important. Like when I pray, when I go to the altar and I pray, I will do my prayers, and then I will speak from my heart in my own sort of prayer, and then engaging in in a meditative practice so that you can receive an answer is something that is incredibly important. I think to like engaging in a prayer session, um, writing, which is like a part of journaling, but also like um, my own creative writing. Like I've engaged in so many different forms of creative writing, and the way that I know it's spiritually informed is because the way that I feel when I write a piece that is really satisfying to me is the same like sort of rush of energy and love that I get um, when I'm like when I receive like a spiritual dream, or when an ancestor comes to a dream and like gives me a hug in the dream, and I'm just like I feel this like rush of adrenaline. I need to keep doing this. This is something that I know is spiritually informed. I don't know why I'm making these like ridiculously goofy like raps. I don't know why I'm making these um like that's when I was younger, but now I understand I understand when like I am being whispered to. I understand when like someone is communicating with me. And often now I'm at the point where I can go and be like, this is what's going on. Can you give me a dream that shows me how to work through this? What materials do I need to work through this? And they will reveal that in such like such evident ways. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, I'm just like, you're just gonna be so bold with it. Um, I think being with friends and loved ones is something that is just like a part of like just the community part of healing is so important. So being with your friends and loved ones is something that is like important. Um, I love to read. I think that when I read other people's work, I'm looking at their relationship to their spirituality. I'm like, this is your spiritual practice, and I'm recognizing that, and I'm also able to heal from this. Uh, Caring for plants and animals is something that teaches you a lot about like um, just like how like precious life is, and also just like having an appreciation for like what's going on down here. um, and then just sort of like makeup and skin routines, like routines of adornment, are things that are just like very grounding. And I feel like all of these practices just are real, are all, any practice that like grounds you, any activity that grounds you is something that is incredibly important, because you're then having an appreciation for all of the gifts that you were bestowed. That I'm not so like, yes, I am like speaking to guides who are in like spiritual realms, but I'm not so concerned with the up there. If I get
Mhm.
stuck in the up there, then I'm not being present. And any activity that is like making me more present in my body, making me more present in my love, in my communication, is something that is like, I know being whispered to me. I know being like, um, bestowed onto me. These are just like having an appreciation for these gifts.
I love that, and I feel like it definitely like same. for me, the ritual of putting on my makeup when getting into drag is like sacred, and I find like connecting with my femininity is like part of my divinity work, and also like being with friends and loved ones. Like part of one of the I think one of the central tenements of divine is community building, community care, community love is a spiritual act. And I love that you said also like adornment. like we're one of the programs we're releasing tomorrow is like it's called Clothed in Righteousness, and it's going to be about adornment and using that as a spiritual tool. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to come out tomorrow at around the same time or at noon. Check the schedule. I can't remember.
Sure.
But I love that you said that. And then as we're like approaching the end of the conversation, like how does your spirituality now manifest in your current artistry?
So currently I'm an editor and a co-founder of Pest Control Magazine, which is a magazine that I like co-founded with like one of my best friends. And so like that in and of itself is something that is incredibly like affirming and healing. But this is something that is I think because I'm giving I'm participating in like establishing this sort of platform, and we're also trying to go beyond like something that is like I'm like beyond establishing a space for artistic catharsis, beyond establishing a space for people to have their work displayed and treated with care and respect. We're going beyond the pages of our publication to establish relationships with different communities like Divine, other publications whose work we really admire, and also where me and another editor, Molly Bryson, developed these accountable editorial practices that we hold true to our project, and those editorial practices resist the hierarchical, exclusive standards that can just often manifest in literary publications. And a part of that is we are actively contributing to mutual aid funds on a rotating basis with every release. And not only that, but like forming relationships with the organizations that we're contributing to monetarily, to go beyond what we've like normally seen in a lot of art spaces, which is like either exclusion or tokenism. And I feel like this so directly coincides with my spiritual practice, because I think the process of like really like, first of all, like utilizing the gifts that I have been bestowed, which are like writing and like organizing and editing, and all these other processes of art making, to highlight the work of others and really give you like other people that like rush of energy. Like I know what it feels like to write a piece of work and to be just so proud of yourself and so proud of like everything who you are, and being like, I am articulating myself in the way that I see fit, is something that I'm engaging with in Pest Control. I feel like my spiritual background definitely informs the way that I edit others' work, and the way that I want to like establish a platform with all of my friends to do something that's beyond just like being self-important. Because I'm just like, what is the purpose of like having a platform during this time if not to spread joy in ways that are like tangible? I'm like, people need money to live. Like people need their GoFundMe's met. People need resources, and if I can participate in that process, I'm just like so humbled. I'm so humbled by all the work that we receive. I'm so humbled by like this opportunity to like engage in this work with my friends.
Yeah, there's so many parallels with Pest Control Mag and Divine, and we're happy to be in solidarity. And this is just the one of the many first collaborations. But yeah, definitely y'all should check out Pest Control Mag. Right, put their handle in the comments.
Yes, thank you, Rai.
But yeah, we're at the end of the talk, so like keep plugging Pest Control if you want, or plug any of your social media and any other projects. Like I know you've talked to me about like your scholarship and your like ethnographic research. That's very exciting, and like I want us to like definitely probably make a part two because there's probably so much more in
Yes.
that we probably can't cover in the next 10 minutes. But yeah, what are you working on? What do you want people to like know that you're doing?
Yeah, so I can give just like a brief synopsis of the work that I'm engaging in. So I'm in the last semester of undergrad right now, and the I'm like doing research. I'm doing screen narrative ethnographic research to investigate the way that African traditional religions are represented on screen. And this is something that is informed by my experience working in Hollywood, creating a show about an African traditional religion, and having the amazing opportunity to be in a space where like my identity was affirmed, where I had like creative autonomy, where there was no hierarchy, and that's something that is like unheard of in Hollywood. And I was extremely blessed to have that opportunity, but that's not something that's the norm at all. And also, our project wasn't greenlighted because it's not understood. At the same time, when you're talking about African traditional religions, these are closed traditions, and these are traditions that are not text based, they're ritual based. And so, like, a big misconception of a lot of the scholarship in relationship to like African traditional religions is trying to like untangle or trying to make assertions about the theological truths of these traditions, which is not like you can't do it. Like it's not something that is going to be completely accurate to everybody's relationship to their own specific, like not all ATR are the same, and not even within the like a specific tradition of an African traditional religion, you're going to have nuances and differences in ritual and engagement. And that's something that can be informed by your own relationship to your ancestors, your own specific spiritual guides, your own spiritual house, and also the elders and communities that you surround yourself with. So the work that I'm doing is trying to untangle how representations of African traditional religions on screen are either fetishized or demonized for the purpose of furthering an agenda of colonization and just always trying to regulate the way that Black people make meaning and the way that Black people heal themselves. So that's the work that I'm doing in my own research, and it's something that I'd be happy to talk more about, and I would have done more work anyway. So yeah, that's the work that I'm engaging with now, because as somebody who has worked in Hollywood, and I'm a member of the Writers Guild of America East, which is a labor union representing professional film and television writers. I think about what is like all my work, all the work that I want to do engages with spirituality. How can I make that fit within like a system that doesn't even want me there in the first place, that has never had respect for me or people who look like me, that doesn't accurately talk about like the way that Black spiritualists are discriminated against, are harmed, are limited and regulated. Um, and I want to engage in that work to figure out like what are the what are the forms that I can engage in order to tell the stories that I want to tell, like authentically and coming from a place of honesty and openness. I don't know if Hollywood is a space for that, if I even want that. But having that experience of like attempting to engage in that work, I think that I have this how can I make my art spiritually informed and also like honest and something that people can see themselves in, and it's like not a tragedy, not
Yeah.
not a caricature.
Yeah. Yeah, that all that sounds very fascinating, and we're gonna have to do like a part two at some point. Just because like there's so much there, and it's like also like that cultural respect and cultural boundaries of like knowing, can I participate in this practice? And like if you feel some type of way when someone tells you no, it's a closed practice, really doing the shadow work and the inner dialogue of like why I'm behaving that way. Because like with that, it reminds me so much of like how we're overusing and over exploiting sage and palo santo. It's like this is a closed, it's supposed to be a closed indigenous ritual, and yet all these spiritual Beckys are like cleanse the energy, and when you're probably the bad energy in the room.
I'm like,
um
you're not living in equilibrium, which is the
yeah,
whole point. You're
yeah,
not living in equilibrium. You're not healing anybody except yourself, allegedly. I'm like, you're gonna get
allegedly.
humbled.
Yeah,
You're gonna get humbled. Like, either way, you're gonna get humbled.
yeah, it's like, did you even ask the earth for that herb? And you probably didn't. You just bought it from Sephora or Urban Outfitters.
Yeah, wherever.
um yeah, so yeah, we reached the end. Thank you so much, Tati, for doing this, and a huge shout out to Pest Control, and wish you all the success, and we're going to keep supporting you, building solidarity with you. Everybody, please make sure to follow them. uh, this was the second program in the week-long residency. Please check our Instagram and at Hot Wheelz Festival for and hotwheelzfestival.com for like the full programming lineup. Please engage. Please, we have a spiritual community prayer ritual where you can input a need, and us as a community and any other generous spirit workers, energy workers, will be able to intercede and work on your behalf. Tomorrow we have the Clothed in Righteousness panel with me, Rai Douglas, and Zule Orozco, and it's a very fun, cute conversation. Um, what else? At the end of the week, we're gonna have a short film screening of a piece of work that I wrote, and one with Front Porch Oracles. I'm all over the place. There's gonna be a manifesto writing workshop with Jasmine Barber. Please sign up. The link is in our bio. There's limited slots to 50, so please sign up if you want a spot to be a part of that workshop. And yeah, we'll keep following us. We're doing a lot more programming. Thank you so much, Tati, and I'll see you all around. Um, Peace and love.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. It's been so much fun. I'm so looking forward to the rest of what Divine has to offer, and possibly doing a part two.
Yeah,
I'm really excited.
definitely gonna happen.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.
Good night. Blessings.